Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 24 playthrough of the New York Yankees. This is not going to be our long-term playthrough. This is just something that we're going to do over the next couple of weeks, maybe sim a couple of seasons overall, until hopefully there's a patch or two out on the game and we feel pretty comfortable starting our long-term simulation, which will be one of the 10 franchises that we talked about in a video we put out a couple weeks ago about 10 challenging teams to consider in OOTP 24. But for purposes of this video, just going to play with my favorite team in real life, the Yankees. And it's also going to give us an opportunity to test out some of the new game settings. If you go to the AI settings, you can see we've got trading difficulty ratcheted all up the way to, quote, Spinal Tap up to 11. And we're also going to play with the new hard mode for trading, as well as the reputation system for the human GM in trading. So although the Yankees, by virtue of their massive budget and payroll, are a different type of challenge than a lot of the smaller market teams, and certainly less of a challenge than some of the small market teams, still think this will be an interesting learning experience to at least try the most challenging trade settings available in OOTP 24. The thing that we'd like to do right now, a couple days before the season starts, we've taken our money down to essentially nothing left, and we've only got $12 million in our scouting and development budgets. So what we would like to do is potentially get a couple of these bad contracts off of the books over the next day or two so we can put a little more money into scouting and player development before those figures get locked on us for the season. I'm not really sure what, if anything, we'll be able to trade away. Clearly, looking at the least talented players on our team, would love to get out from under that Aaron Hicks contract, but I just don't know who in their right mind would be willing to take it on. And given that with the trade settings that we're on, we're going to be getting as little as possible for Hicks. And we've also got the situation where we can't just click back and forth and have that immediate feedback with the other team as to what will make a deal work. Have a hard time believing we're going to be able to pull something together in a day or two to get that contract off of the books before the season starts. But that will be our goal. And then we're going to try to see if we can maybe win a World Series over these next few seasons as we're playing through the Yankees. Also, as I said, learning more about how the difficult trade setting and the hard trade mode work, get a little more experience with the new international amateur free agency, the new trade deadline dynamics, and a lot of the other changes in the game. Look forward to spending some time with those things and learning more about this new version of my favorite game. And if you just happen to be watching us and you aren't a subscriber yet, would sincerely appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. Our goal is to get to 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year. We started this channel almost 2 years ago, so it's been a slow slog forward to kind of get a little traction and get subscribers, but do sincerely appreciate everyone who watches our videos, whether or not you subscribe, and would love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing in the comment section down below, or possibly to the right. Everyone always just says the comment section down below, but honestly, depending on what type of device you're using, I think sometimes you click down below and then it shows up on the right if you're using a tablet. But I digress. Let's get to the Yankees. And we've got 3 goals from Mr. Steinbrenner as we prepare for the season to get underway. Just win the championship this year, upgrade at shortstop, and to build a championship team over time. No optionality around these 3 goals. Probably we'll get some next year where we may have the opportunity to do some of the negotiation around owner goals, which is one of the more interesting features in the new game. Taking a look at the salary situation, clearly there's a fair amount of contracts we'd love to get out from under. The places where I think we can make the most bang for the buck potentially, getting away from IKF. He just can't hit in this version of the game, which is, a bit unrealistic given that he's hit 280, 271, and 261 the last few years. Perhaps his ratings that we see for him. There's something hidden that we can't see where he's going to be more productive. But looking at that rating profile, I think the guy's going to struggle to hit 240 in the majors, quite honestly. And he's making a good amount of money. Last year of his contract, so it's not like a horrible deal, but I just don't think he's going to be anything but somebody who maybe gets 150 at-bats for us as a utility infielder. And since I don't think he can really hit, I think we can find a replacement level player that's going to give us about as much offense. Frankie Montas, because of the injury, if we can potentially get out from that $7.5 million contract, that would give us some money right away. Obviously, there's a chance that he'll come back at the end of this season and be a good player in August and September to maybe help get the Yankees into the playoffs. But there's no guarantee that he's going to be back in those 3 to 4 months. Also doesn't have the best work ethic in the world. Given that, I don't think he's a player that we're going to look to sign to an extension. So if we can clear off money from him, that's another option. Hicks, as I've talked about, would love to get out from under that contract. I just question whether, with these trade settings, whether it's going to be something that we could practically do at this point. And then would love to get out from under Josh Donaldson as well. What he does have going in his defense is that particularly if we do move on from IKF, probably need to keep him. And he at least is a competent defensive third baseman who does still have some home run power and a good eye. He's severely overpaid at $21 million, particularly given how fragile he is. Clearly, I don't think we'll be exercising that team option for next season. If we could get him off the books for this year, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, but free agency is obviously over at this point, with it being March 28th, so it would really just free up some money for us to put into scouting and player development. So I tend to think we'll probably stick with Donaldson, but those 4 guys are the ones that we're going to try to at least shop around and see what we can get. So I'd love to have somebody take all of IKF's contract. I don't know if that's practical or not, so I'm going to shop him retaining 20% and see if we can get any traction. Not really all that much. We can get Jake Rogers from Detroit, who's a competent backup catcher. Didn't play in the majors at all last year. I assume he must have been injured. So it looks like he is on the Tigers, and he's got a minor league contract. He's on the Tigers roster right now, but he may be getting ready to get sent to AAA. So we could pick him up, or we could pick up Luis Rengifo from the Angels. And our scouting accuracy is low on everybody right now, or not everybody, but many players right now since we're at the start of a sim. Looks like Rengifo is not as good defensively as IKF, but he's got a little bit better of a bat, although he's going to strike out a ton, but he makes less money. So maybe there's something we can do with Mr. Rengifo here. So wonder if it sounds like they'll do it with if we retain 20% of IKF's contract. Let's send him an offer cutting it down to 10% for Rengifo. And although I do want to get this done, we'll see if we can do 15% and just get the deal done. So we'll submit that offer to the Angels. This is obviously the situation I was talking about with the fact that we are using the hard mode for trade settings. When we get into the actual negotiations here, normally you have that make this work now button where you can find out exactly what you need to add in to get a deal done. With that hard mode trade setting, you don't get that much feedback. You just have to send an offer off to the other team and then hope that they get back to you in a timely manner with some feedback. Aaron Hicks is the next guy I'd love to get rid of. no idea what we're going to have here. We'll shop him retaining 50% of the contract. It's not going to shock me if we don't even get a sniff at that level because it's such a bad contract. Yep, no team offers a single player for him at 50%. So only got 3 more shops today, so we're going to make sure to at least check out the other players as well that we're thinking about potentially moving on from. That'll bring us to the injured list with Montas. I do have the trade settings so that you can trade injured players. That is one other change that I did make. I think with Montas, there probably is going to be a market for him. I'm going to see what's out there if we don't retain anything. Yeah, there's offers out there for him where we can at least get the contract off the books. I'll spend a little time now figuring out if there's anything that's actually interesting. And I'm actually a little intrigued by Jalen Beaks of the Rays. I don't love the Yankees bullpen right now, and it could also use another lefty. If we're able to, and granted, we've got low scouting accuracy on him, but he is a player who's been in the major leagues for the last 3 years, so he's got a track record, or I guess 3 of the last 4 years he's been in the majors. But so he's got a track record. He's definitely a reliever, but OSA ratings on him are in the same neighborhood, so I feel pretty confident that he's a useful piece for the bullpen. Obviously, he's not worth a healthy Frankie Montas, but the opportunity to potentially get Montas off our books and get a healthy pitcher for the bullpen for the next few months might be something we should think about. So they would do that straight up. So now my thought is, can we get them to maybe retain some of Beaks' contract to save us a little more money? It's definitely interesting where you don't have the make this work now button. It's definitely a whole different level of strategy, and it definitely doesn't let you kind of optimize and perfect every trade. So I think this could be a real big challenge with a team that's got a lot less payroll flexibility than the Yankees. I think it's going to be a challenge with the Yankees as well, but it's kind of interesting to strategically think what you want to put on the table, particularly in this situation where what I want to do is get out from under this contract literally in the next day or so. So I can put some of that money into scouting and player development. So since it's not huge money that we're really talking about with Beaks, maybe I'll cut it down to 20%, just so hopefully that increases the chance that we can get this deal done. So we'll submit that offer as well. Hopefully we'll hear back from that. Then the last guy I had mentioned was obviously Josh Donaldson. I would have to think that this is not going to be an easy contract to get rid of. Start with retaining 30%, see if anything happens there. Nothing. Okay, so Donaldson and Aaron Hicks are both pretty difficult contracts, and we've only got one player left to shop. I think we're going to go back to Hicks because, as I talked about, Donaldson, you can argue that he's got a role for the Yankees this year as our starting third baseman, and then we declined the team option at the end of this season, and we're done with him. So it's not all that complicated with Donaldson to get out from the contract after this year. Hicks, on the other hand, we're set up with for the next 3 seasons. I don't really want to retain 80% of this, but just want to see if there's even anything out there if we try to do that. One option, Jake Rogers, the catcher. Apparently Detroit really wants to get rid of Jake Rogers. Does he have option years left? He's got 1 option year left. I don't know that I want to keep 80% of Hicks' contract. I'd love it to be less than that, but he's basically a useless player at this point. He can't hit, and he's an outfielder. He's making around $10 million a year for the next 3 years. I mean, we're only clearing a couple $1 million by making this trade. I'll pare it back to 70% just to see what they say. I don't know for sure that I would accept the trade if they come back at 70%, which leads us to the other new feature of the game, the trading reputation. If I give them this offer and they come back and say, yeah, done deal, and then I renege on it, that's not really ideal in terms of my reputation with the other teams. But in a perfect world, I just want to get out from that Aaron Hicks contract and move on and not have to think about him or IKF or that horrible trade that brought the Yankees Frankie Montas ever again. So obviously Donaldson would be the fourth to make a grand slam. Doesn't look like we've got any chance of getting out under from him over the next day or two, but those are 4 deals that in retrospect have not worked out particularly well for the Yankees. So we'll go ahead and submit that offer and start simming forward. Obviously, if we lose some of these players, we're going to have some decisions to make as far as what our 26-man roster looks like. Right now, the plan for the Yankees, at least from the default when I opened up the game, is that Anthony Volpe's down in AAA. I kind of think that's the right way to play this. If you look at Mr. Volpe, obviously one of the top prospects in baseball, but he still has a fair amount of development. And although he's experienced at shortstop, I don't think shortstop is necessarily his ideal position at the major league level. I think second base probably is. So I'd like to give him some time to play second and even third a bit down in AAA, while hopefully he's developing the rest of his offensive skills a little bit more this season. Unfortunately, we have heard back on all 3 proposals, and they're all listed as almost. Now, experienced OOTP players know that almost can mean throw in a crappy minor leaguer and we're good, or can it mean throw in the best player in your organization and we're good? The deal to move away from IKF and get another utility infielder in return, yeah, it looks like they're just looking for a throw-in kind of player. So I think that will free up some money for us, give us a utility infielder who is actually a little bit better of an offensive player, I think, than IKF, even though he's not as good defensively, and save us some money. So I think that makes sense. Just going to have to go through those players and figure out who's the least worthy of remaining a proud member of the New York Yankees organization. And all of the players that will make the deal work are pretty weak. We're going to include Mariano Solomon. You can see very limited prospect that this soon-to-be 21-year-old is ever going to progress, probably beyond even A-ball. So happy to include Solomon in the deal. So we will add Mariano Solomon and discuss. And we do have the opportunity to complete the trade now because this is something that they would do. So thank you, IKF, for your year with the Yankees. We are going to replace you with Luis Rengifo to save some money. So we're going to go ahead and complete that trade. First trade that we've made. And that did open up a little more money for us. So before we forget about it, we'll add another couple $1 million into our scouting budget, and another $1 million into our player development budget. And maybe we'll get a little more money through additional trades. But Rengifo will take IKF's spot on the 26-man roster as utility infielder for us. In this Detroit deal, we still have to retain 70% of Hicks's contract. We have to throw in pretty useful pitchers. Marinaccio's definitely got a role on our staff this year in the bullpen. So does Jonathan Lasaiga. Will Warren, he's an okay prospect. He's been in Double-A, low work ethic. I don't love him. Michael King could end up being our closer for at least the time being, given the injury to, Tommy Conley, that's right. And then Luis Serna, 18-year-old. He's got a little bit of potential, it looks like. Unlikely that he's going to develop and reach the heights, but to me, minor leaguer Will Warren is the one that I'd be most willing to throw in. Almost 24 years old. Had a decent year in Double-A ball. He's definitely going to be nothing but a replacement level player, I think, at the major league level. We're gonna have to keep 70% of Hicks's contract, so we're getting a little over $3 million in relief this year, a little less than $3 million relief for each of the next 2 years. We are getting a little bit of organizational depth as catcher, but even if we're paying, Hicks just shouldn't be on a roster. He's not even a fifth outfielder with that bat. He's a guy who will go up there and he'll pick up a walk every 7 or 8 plate appearances, and that's kind of the only thing he does that's valuable. If I had lots of time to think about this, we could probably put together a deal where we don't have to keep as much. I just want Hicks gone. So we're going to add Will Warren, and we're going to go ahead and do that deal. It's kind of interesting in the situation now where you can't just keep making changes to optimize the deal. I think the feedback from the assistant GMs, which I have always ignored completely over the years, may be a little more useful now, assuming that it's not just comments about them having indigestion and stuff, which was the way it's been in previous versions, and sometimes they just have a 180-degree opposite opinion of mine as far as deals, and obviously I'm smarter than the computer AI, at least I hope I am. So I tend to go with my own judgment, but this will free up a little over $3 million, get that contract off of our books. So goodbye, Aaron Hicks. One of the more ill-conceived contracts in New York Yankees history is now gone. That gives us a little more money here, so we'll bump the scouting budget up to $15 million and player development up to $14 million. And we're going to need to ultimately find another outfielder for the team. Promote somebody from AAA most likely. Probably. Florial looks like he's not great in this version, but honestly he's pretty solid defensively, and his bat maybe still a little bit better than what we had with Hicks. So we'll be able to find someone in AAA in Scranton to bring up, but we still want to look at that last deal here with Tampa. And we can get Montas off the books for Jalen Beaks, have them keep some of his money. It's just a matter of which minor leaguer we're going to send. It looks like they're not big ones because Solomon we already included in that other deal. So we'll see if there's any deal to be had there as well. And this is probably the hardest deal to think about, just because if Montas comes back and is healthy, he could definitely be a good contributor for us the last couple months of the season. But he's not a player we're committed to long term. Don't love his personality. No guarantees that he's going to recover in those 3 to 4 months without any setbacks. So if we throw in Alex Bustamante, those of you who have watched previous episodes of mine know that I tend to like people with really good personalities, and although he does have a good work ethic, low intelligence, low adaptability, he's never going to really be a major league pitcher most likely. So we're going to add in Alex Bustamante, and we're going to make this deal for Beaks. I think it will definitely help our bullpen, and we're going to complete this trade. It'll free up a good additional chunk of money for us. Pretty significant, so we can get our scouting budget up to $18 million for this coming year, and we can get player development up to $17 million and still have a little bit of money to potentially play with. So I'm actually surprised we got all three of those contracts off the books. Donaldson will live with, but that definitely let us start investing at least a baseline amount into scouting and player development, better than where we were before, better than the league baseline in both. So at least we're on the right side of the bell curve in terms of those investments for this upcoming season. And to make room for Beaks on the roster, we're going to set Greg Weissert down to AAA Scranton Wilkes-Barre. And now, as I was talking about earlier, we will need to find another outfielder to help us, because with the departure of Hicks, right now we just have Stanton, Judge, and Rafael Ortega. Clearly it will be good for us once we get Harrison Bader back, hopefully within a month or so. And then for our pitching staff, we're anxiously awaiting Heel, Rodon, Scott Efros, Tommy Conley, and Lou Trevino. We do have some reinforcements coming, which is good. I am glad that we added Beaks to the bullpen, but I definitely feel like the bullpen is a weakness of the team right now with all of these players that are injured. And I know I was talking about Estevan Florial, but I think we're going to bring up Willie Calhoun. Has a major league average-ish type bat. He's a brutal defensive outfielder in left field. I don't think he's going to be a long-term member of the team, but with the fact that Rafael Ortega right now is our left fielder, I think Ortega is better defensively, but I think Calhoun is probably a little better offensively, so hopefully we can mix and match among those two a bit over the next few weeks. I would think that also potentially thinking about Oswaldo Cabrera in a super utility role for us, potentially playing some left and right, similar to what he ended up doing the final month and a half, 2 months of the season for the Yankees last year, is also something for us to think about. So hopefully we can piece together a respectable lineup in the outfield in particular until we get Harrison Bader back, in which case we'll be feeling like things have stabilized a little bit, hopefully. And that trade with Beaks may end up important for us, because Aaron Boone just installed him as the closer in his opening days as a member of the New York Yankees. So moving on from Montas for him hopefully helps us. Hopefully it doesn't hurt if we have to be facing Montas and the Braves over the last couple months of the season, if and when he's healthy. Hopefully that won't come back to bite us. And we did change the roster that Aaron Boone wanted to use a little bit. He wanted Rafael Ortega as our starting left fielder against both righties and lefties. We actually put the recently promoted Willie Calhoun into the lineup against left-handers. And then we've got Oswaldo Cabrera in as the left fielder against right-handed pitching. 24-year-old who's on the major league roster. Want to ensure he's getting some pretty regular playing time, even though we're obviously pivoting to Peraza as our starting shortstop, and we've got LeMahieu, at least while he's healthy, as our second baseman. Would think that there will be opportunities due to injuries for Cabrera to potentially play at second, third, or short going forward, but want to ensure that he's at least getting some regular at-bats at this point, since he still does, in theory, have some development that could take place and make him a little bit better of an overall package. And with those trades made and those roster changes made, it's time to get the season underway. Like I said, we've expanded our scouting and player development budgets a bit, and we've definitely gotten out from under that contract with Mr. Aaron Hicks, which I am very appreciative of. Obviously, we'll be retaining a good chunk of it for the next couple years, but we've got 30% of it off of our books, and we don't have to force him into a spot on our 26-man roster any longer. And no pressure here in the Bronx. Hal Steinbrenner has reminded us that the goal this year is simply to win it all. And we are ready to get the season underway. For those who were wondering about our settings, other than the trade settings, which we've also talked about, we are playing in challenge mode, with everything else is just the defaults for challenge mode. So not a lot of settings that we can tweak since we're playing in that version. I am going to bump our ticket price down just a tad here to start the season. Fan interest at 83 is not exceptional. And we're on pace to have lower attendance than a year ago, so we're going to at least start trying to see what will happen with slightly lower ticket prices, and hopefully that will avoid a significant decline in revenue. Right now we're on target for about a 3.1% per game decline in revenue. Would like to, if at all possible, get that to even or perhaps ahead of where we were a year ago. But clearly having a successful season on the field and getting the fans excited about what we're doing here with the Yankees would be a important step in making that happen. And a decent start for the Yankees over the first week plus. 5-3 record here, a game out in the AL East, but shortstop Oswald Peraza was just suspended, along with Michael Givens of Baltimore, from a on-field ruckus. So Peraza not off to an incredible start here in 2023, but obviously very early stages of the season and a very small sample size. And a couple days ago, we actually got an offer from the Cubs that is interesting. Typically, I've found in previous versions of OOTP that 95% of the trade offers were not all that interesting, and perhaps that's the same number in OOTP 24, but this is the first one I've really looked at, and it's actually interesting, so it makes me think that hopefully the AI on that topic has been improved. The Cubs would retain 90% of left fielder Ian Happ's contract, and also give us a middling minor league prospect in B.J. Murray for a decent minor league pitching prospect. Certainly looks like he could have exceptional stuff, but his movement and control are a big question, as well as our backup catcher Hicks. And if it were not, if Kyle was still the Yankees starting catcher, I might feel differently about this, but Jose Trevino, with that 80 catcher ability and a similar-ish, but probably not quite as good, but a similar-ish bat to Hicks, is clearly our starting catcher. And we do have in the organization now, because of that other trade that we made, Jake Rogers, who is a more than competent backup catcher, in my opinion. And right now that hole in left field is gaping. Rafael Ortega is 0 for 7 this year, and Willie Calhoun is hitting 162 in 37 at-bats. Even when Harrison Bader gets back, I feel like we would have a spot for Happ, because in a perfect world, and you can see Judge right now is banged up with a quad strain already, Stanton and Judge are both fragile. In a perfect world, we certainly don't want Judge in center field. Bader will at least let us move him to right. But if we have Ian Happ on board, then we can get Judge and Stanton sometime at DH going forward. So I'm actually kind of intrigued by this. I feel like it makes sense for us, given that our goal is to try to win this year, according to Mr. Steinbrenner. And we don't really need Higgy anymore as a backup catcher. So I think I'm going to go ahead and we're going to just complete the trade. We're not even going to mess around. Higgy is gone. Happ is on the team. We need to make some corresponding roster moves now. And we're going to promote Jake Rogers to be our backup catcher. And we are also going to move on from Mr. Ortega. I don't know that he doesn't have any option years left, so I guess the hope is maybe we can get something for Ortega in trade. that low leadership personality, not going to be the worst thing in the world to get that off of the roster. Would rather keep Calhoun up for the time being with the better work ethic. So let's see if there's anything we can get by shopping Mr. Ortega here. Guessing there's not going to be robust demand for him. Probably going to be either nothing or some pretty miserable contracts coming in return. And it's nothing. All right, well, what if we retain half of his salary? We'll take a look at anything people will give us. Yeah, there's just no bid out there for Ortega, so we will just let him go. Won't let us put him on to AAA, I assume. Yeah, we've got to waive and DFA him. So RF, well, we'll give it one last shot. Try to save every penny that we possibly can. What if we retain 80% of his contract? Anybody want Rafael Ortega now? Nope. Time to move on from Mr. Ortega. And although the record here on April 22nd is 10-10, so definitely not that good, could still be a magical day for the Yankees because Rodon, Conley, and Bader all got healthy on the exact same day. So we are going to set all of them on rehab assignments in the minors. Hopefully it won't take a real long time until we're comfortable that they're ready to be up at the major league level. But since they all missed the first 3 weeks of the season as well as the last several weeks of training camp, want to ensure that they get a little bit of time to hopefully get fully healthy and acclimated before we start making some more roster moves to bring them up to the big club, where hopefully all three will be probably by early May. Rodon is a starting pitcher. We may want to get him 2 starts down there, but I would think Conley and Bader hopefully will have up before the end of the month. And we've made it to May 1st, 15-14 records, so not a great start to the season for the Yankees, but only 2 games out in the division. Taking a look at the standings, quite a cluster in the American League, only 4 games separating the Blue Jays at the top of the division from the Rays at the bottom of the division. So we are right in the middle of that pack. Hopefully we can play a little better going forward now that we're getting healthy. Need to make some room for Tommy Conley now. Albert Abreu has not been great. Certainly is one of the lesser profiles of anyone on the team. Unfortunately, he's out of option years. We are going to go ahead, though, and waive and Dia. We can't because he's out of option years, so we have to actually just we screwed that up. Well, I don't think there's anything that we're going to be able to get for Abreu, but in the interest of just ensuring that, I'll shop him. And not surprisingly, oh, we can get Andrew Suarez, a 30-year-old minor league pitcher. No, thank you. So we will take the hit in just moving on from Mr. Abreu from the roster here. Opened up our roster spot, and that will enable us to move Mr. Conley back onto the team. And it's going to keep Beaks as the closer right now, and Beaks has been good. 1.98 ERA, 7 saves for us thus far. 1-2 record, so he hasn't been perfect, but 22 strikeouts in 13 2/3 innings is pretty impressive. The 12 walks that he's allowed in that same number of innings is not very impressive, but does give us a second left-handed arm out in the bullpen, and we are getting close to having another lefty back in the rotation. Rodon has pitched twice in AAA at this point, 112 pitches 2 days ago, gone 14 and a third innings. So we're going to keep him down there for another 3 days just so he's completely rested up and ready to go when we bring him back up to the big club. And it's time to make some room for Carlos Rodon now. We don't have a ton of options, unfortunately. Wandy Peralta does still have an option left, but he's a left-handed pitcher, which we need. So honestly, I think we may be looking to move on from Zach Green, who it looks like I think we'd picked up in the Rule 5 draft, I believe from the Mets. He was drafted by the Mets from us and then returned to us. But then it wasn't going to, because he was Rule 5 eligible, I don't think we can send him down or something. He's got, yeah, there we go. Yeah, the Memphis Redbirds are the team that still ultimately has his rights, so we can't just send him down to AAA. We have to, yeah, so I didn't follow exactly what happened there in real life. Because the Mets took him away from us in the Rule 5, but it looks like somehow his Rule 5 rights are still with the Memphis Redbirds. So we're just going to have to return him. I guess we could see if there's anything we can get for Mr. Green in trade. He is off to a nice start this year. Anybody else want to keep him on their roster? And there are some options. I'll at least look at this. And we can at least get Caleb Boushley from Milwaukee, who's in the minors, still has option years available. Although it looks like they were just going to do that deal. But I guess we still have to submit it. We can't even just complete it here, even though it seemed like something that we could just do. So that unfortunately will give us another day till we can figure out what to do with Rodon. So I guess we'll give him a third start down in AAA. Actually, that's crazy. We'll send Wandy Peralta down to AAA temporarily. That'll allow us to bring the lefty Rodon onto the Major League roster. Let's see what Mr. Boone wants to do with the rotation. And he puts Rodon right in as the number one guy. Moves Domingo German, who's been struggling, into the bullpen. And that is our rotation. I just took Clark Schmidt out of the follower role because I don't like that silliness. So we've got Rodon back. Let's see if that trade goes through, and then maybe we'll sim up through the end of May, see where the team stands, and call this an episode. And it looks like Milwaukee is making us add someone else into the deal, so we'll add in Norberto Henriquez, go ahead and complete the trade. So Caleb Boushley is part of our organization now, and that will allow us to bring Mr. Peralta back up onto the Major League pitching staff. See what Boone wants to do with the bullpen. So things are getting a little bit better for the Yankees now. Taking a look at the IL, still waiting on Rortvedt and Trevino. Should be back in a week or so. Luis Heel might have him back before the end of the year. And Efros obviously gone for the season. Guess all that movement back and forth on the proverbial Columbus shuttle. I guess it is now the Scranton Wilkes-Barre shuttle in these newer days, but did not sit well with Wandy Peralta. He's got a sore elbow, going to be gone for about 3 weeks. So we will put him on to the injured list. Hopefully we'll have him back late May, early June. Still have about 4 days till Trevino will potentially be back. So going to go back down to the minors to find a replacement pitcher, or perhaps we could run with 12 pitchers for the next few days and give somebody else a chance at the major league level. And we brought Greg Weissert back up, who was one of our final cuts coming out of spring training. I think we sent him down when we brought up Jalen Beaks. Hasn't been incredibly productive in the IL, but seemed like he was the best arm to fill in at the major league level for a little while until we do get Lou Trevino back. And Rortvedt and Trevino are both healthy. Rortvedt still has option years left, so I think we are just going to sign him right to AAA rather than put him on a formal rehab assignment. Trevino, we'll give him a little bit of time. He will likely be up very soon, and we can send Greg Weissert back down at that point. And we've made it to the middle of May. Trevino pitched one game down in Scranton, an inning and 2/3 yesterday, so we'll probably let him have one more outing down there before we bring him up. But otherwise, the Yankees are relatively healthy right now, playing a little better of late. The record is 24-18, half a game behind the Red Sox in the AL East. I think if the Red Sox win the AL East this year, I think that would be a shock given the way they have been spending and managing that payroll less aggressively in terms of adding talent and keeping talent than they have over most of the past 20-25 years. So anything can happen, as those standings show. We are in a wild card spot, 2 games up on the Guardians and the Orioles in the second spot, and 2 games up on the third wild card spot. So the Yankees have turned things around a little bit, playing a little better of late, as you can see with a 7-3 record over our last 10, although we have lost 2 in a row, unfortunately. Taking a look at the team stats, we're a game better than our Pythagorean record at this point, winning records in both April and May, really playing much better here in the month of May, as we've talked about. Only 8th in the American League in runs scored, 3rd in runs allowed. So our pitching has actually done really well. A 3.41 ERA from our starters, 2.77 ERA from our bullpen. Little surprised. I would have expected if we were going to be 3rd in one category and 8th in another, we would have been 3rd in hitting and 8th in pitching. But the team is playing pretty well so far. Unfortunately, attendance not great. That revenue per game is down significantly this year, which will not make Mr. Steinbrenner very happy. Take a quick look at our pitching staff. Carlos Rodon, 2 games now, he's been good. Garrett Cole, only 3-5, but the ERA is respectable. And then the rest of the team has more than respectable ERAs. Nestor Cortez, 2-2, 1.59. And Luis Severino and Clark Schmidt both have winning records in ERAs in the mid-3s. Jalen Beaks still pretty productive as a closer with 10 saves. He's lost 4 games for us now, though, so the fact that he's walking so many batters, 14 and 18 and a third innings, is becoming a bit problematic for us. We'll see if maybe a swap to Tommy Conley is the right decision down the line. He's only recently back from that injury, but has pitched pretty well. And quite honestly, most of the bullpen has pitched pretty well. The only high ERA out there is Domingo Germán, who, as you know, spent most of this season as a starter for us. But at least in terms of the earned run averages, the bullpen's been pretty good thus far. Taking a look at our everyday players, sorted by the highest WAR. Aaron Judge hitting .317, 12 homers, 27 ribbies, so not on pace for a 62 home run season, but still a nice start to the year. Oswald Peraza hitting .246 with 5 homers, 7 steals. He seems to be doing pretty well as our starting shortstop. Jose Trevino, the great defensive catcher, hitting just .213 with 3 homers. Still win above replacement at this point, thanks largely to his defense. Harrison Bader's been pretty good since he came back, .279 with 4 homers and 67 at-bats. Got 6 homers from Josh Donaldson this year, but he's hitting just .223. Giancarlo Stanton, the big disappointment, .255 average, 7 homers and 170 at-bats. Obviously not adding very much with his glove. Hopefully he can produce a little more going forward. Anthony Rizzo also slightly below average, hitting just a $195 with 7 home runs, and Gleyber Torres really struggling, hitting a $196, and he only has 1 home run and 170 at bats. So definitely some players who can be doing better, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. But feel like we've gotten through these early stages of the season. We got some contracts off of our books, and at least the Yankees are as healthy as they've been thus far this season. So hopefully we can continue to play some good baseball over the month of May and see where this team stands as we get closer to the All-Star game and the draft, and needing to make some decisions around the trade deadline. And right now, with the way finances have evolved, don't really have any money available, so that's going to certainly make it interesting if we need to tap the trade market. I think with the fact that we are struggling so much revenue-wise, and attendance-wise, down almost 7,000 or over 7,000 a game from last year, gonna dip the ticket prices down just a little bit more. We sold a lot of season tickets, but other than that, we're not putting a lot of, as Chris Mad Dog Russo might say, fannies in the seats in the stadium right now. So hopefully lowering ticket prices a little bit will help, because it does seem like fan interest is pretty good right now. And it also seems like the team's playing decently on the field. And there is a whole new financial engine in the game this year. Obviously, I'm in early stages of figuring out how that works. So some of maybe it's a little more nuanced in some of these things than in the past. And I'll play around with ticket prices, play around with all sorts of things until I figure out what I'm doing here in OOTP 24. And you can see this cost efficiency tab that I've added into our finances box this year, a little different than I had in terms of the setup last year, with a little less space, at least for me in the new game. Yankees, obviously a very expensive roster, so we have not been incredibly cost efficient in the way we've generated those 24 wins so far. And with that, we are going to call it an episode. If you have thoughts on improvements we could make, suggestions, your experiences in OOTP 24 so far, would love to learn from you, and the lumps that you've taken, and any ideas you can share that will make this playthrough go even better for me. So always like to hear what people are thinking. Appreciate any comments you have down below. And until our next episode, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.